And this is all attributed to happening 5,000 years ago, okay? And the hill there's Govardhana Hill, he's lifting it. So there's an entire story in the Puranas, and so many stories in the classical, Vedic literature, the Puranic literature, so many things about that, describing different ages and so on. And of course, too, if you're Christian, then you believe there was 3 wise men coming from the east on camels, I guess, following a moving star, and where a baby was being born of a virgin. So there's, so many kind of supernatural things that are going on, But on the other hand, if we look at it, one could also say that atomic bombs and birth control pills are supernatural, yeah. And so it's a whole very, very, I think, pertinent issue, because we're trying to figure out what's going on. I'm sure, I know everybody in the audience is suffering mental, physical, social disturbances or challenges, And of course, the big one is death. Death. There's no cigarettes. There's no coffee. There's no air. Okay. Then after that, they erase your face, and there's no more face. Yeah. So we're all being pushed by these things, to try and solve these problems, to become free from distress. And also, too, we have so many things that inspire us when we come in contact with different historical things or heroic things or poetry. We're inspired to think, wow, there must be something better than this. But especially coming in contact with people who have appears to have some knowledge about this. Some people from Christianity, from Islam, from Buddhism, from Confucius, In India, of course, there's so many traditions of mysticism, of yoga. And of course, here is very, very monotheistic tradition. On the other hand, people are taking shelter of science, and they think, science has done so many good things, and we should do that. And of course, science is basically a government-promoted worldview. And so this is one of our movement, the ISKCON, the current Hare Krishna movement, which is coming from a very long tradition. But within the current times, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, our founder Acharya, and coming into cyclic succession before him, other people, different times. It's a very old movement, try to do good for everybody, for a long time. And we're very potent philosophical and physical sciences, everything. And the Indian tradition is full of, knowledge about physical reality and medicine, music, architecture, weapons, political science, all these things, So A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami is one of his very prominent disciples, Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He said one time, Prabhupada said over and over again for his entire last year, scientific preaching is my number one preaching program. Preaching, teaching, communicating. That we're offering, that we understand basic scientific principles. We even understand some different detailed areas. Quite a few people are joining ISKCON who are professionals, in different areas, and so, and then beyond that general principles, that's what we offer, that we have actually a broader perspective that puts, the philosophy of nature, science in perspective and so on, and can allow it to actually achieve a lot more than it's achieving now. So these things stimulate us, because right now, every year we have this annual festival, like Christians have Christmas, and what else? They have Black Friday, Crucifixion of Christ, Easter, and then Ramadan, different festivals, which are anniversary festivals commemorating different events, and to make us conscious of these things and aware of how 5,000 years ago, and then coming down to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and different very great, powerful personalities who've accomplished things that will give us a lot of faith and motivation to truly try out seriously to follow this process and see what the result is there. Because as George Harrison said, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Okay. So that's what we're talking about a little bit tonight. Of course, it's a very big topic, but this week we've been having a whole festival. Last Sunday was the anniversary of Krishna lifting Govardhana Hill. I think it was Sunday, it wasn't Saturday. Yeah. And to protect all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, because the king of heaven, Indra, very much like Zeus, was becoming angry because they weren't worshiping him. They were worshiping God, God above the angels, above the demigods. So for a moment he became angry, and he was sending torrents of rain, big blocks of ice, and all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, very simple village people, but full of the most deep love and subtle artistic ability, for Krishna. Were distressed, and then Krishna lifted up Govardhana hill. It was like a complete unit, like a big stone rock, and said, "Come under here." So everybody came under, and then by his mystical powers, everything was very nice, and nobody was feeling any fatigue or anything else, and just singing and dancing or whatever, and seeing Krishna. So beautiful, for 1 week. So I guess we're in like the fifth day or something, the sixth day of because it was 1 week, and finally Indra gave up. So asking some considerations about this. On the right hand side we have Albert Einstein with his afro, that Sai Baba haircut. And the left, then we have the other side, And Einstein, of course, he had his philosophical perspective. He came out of a Jewish tradition, so I would say he had some regular Jewish perspective on what is life and what is reality, and transcendence. So let's go. Next slide, Master. Yeah. Okay. So one thing is very, very fundamental. And this is fundamental to all over the place. Everybody, all cultures, pretty much, whatever we do, we're going to come across time, tiempo. In different cultures, it's almost something which is inexplicable, But it's very different. It's very interesting. If you do cross-cultural views of time, you'll find some very interesting different views of life. And by cultures that go on existing, feed themselves, shelter themselves, they have maybe even more happiness than we're deriving by this industrialization from our European idea, Greco-European idea. So time, the way we look at it from the Western point of view, the scientific point of view, it's a line. It has no branches. Okay, it goes one direction. All the steps are just the same size. Okay. And then down below we put some clips out of the German army, we're marching along here, And that's it. E.T. Hall, sociologist and cultural anthropologist, one of my mentors, and a very nice person, very, very, great, from the University of, I think it was Evanston. Grew up with the Hopi Indians in New Mexico. But his point of view on time, cross-cultural studies of time and everything, is that United States, which is very much promoting its ideas all over the world, but it's very much predominated by Northern German consciousness. We're not being, the Hopi Indians go on with their view, which is quite different, than the worldview of the Northern Germans. And also the view of time between the Germans and then the British. British was different. One view was that time is something we create when we're looking at nature, and the other one was that no, it's intrinsically there. So they're right away. Time is a very subtle thing if you're going to understand reality. But definitely our view in the West is very simplistic, very mechanistic, very German. One of my friends, Chakravarti Das, he said he was from Germany, and he said, Hanuman Swami, you have to understand that for Germans, there are two colors, black and white, and sometimes red. Okay. Go out and look and see how many cars are black, white, or red. So many black, so many white, so many red. But then America, we add something else. We do. We add gray. Yes. So let's eliminate all the black, white, and for America, gray, cars and a few red ones. You'll see you can see we're predominated by this idea of, no embracing subtleties and colors and all these kind of things so much, when it comes down to the hard line, Okay, next slide. Yeah, that's the, okay. Now then we look at the other side, the Puranic side, our side, this great tradition, wonderful culture, which, we're dealing with, okay, yeah, I'm going here. So on the right, on the top, in the corner here, we have a picture of a very, very famous scene of Sukadeva Goswami instructing Maharaj Parikshit 5,000 years ago, at the end of the age of Brahmins, the third age, Now we're in the fourth age. Yeah. And so that's where our information's coming from. It's coming down to Guru Parampara. And the basic principle is that time is the external manifestation of the super soul, Paramatma, intuition, insight, the Holy Spirit. Artists, gamblers, they all show it. Some people, professional gamblers, and they have this deal with Lady Luck, and they get that feeling, they know, and so somebody knows if I put every penny I got on the next roll of the dice, I'm going to win. I got that feeling. There's just no way about it. But I've got to like honor her and just do it. And they win. They win maybe like $5,000 or $2,000. But then they know, okay, here's my deal with Lady Luck. I got to take half that money and go out and spend it on poor people. Give free bottles of beer, free pizzas, hamburgers. Yeah, hey fella, otherwise she won't be happy with me. So they have a certain ethics and morality about, we're dealing with the world and higher forces. But when you see them, talk with them, they there's something there. Professional gamblers, winning living. And then you have psychologists who are doing psychotherapy. Even in science, intuition plays a big part of science. You can look it up there, intuition, insight, and how that's how you get these, get the flash of understanding, which it takes several days actually to bring down into rational, linear description like that. So this super soul, Paramatma in Sanskrit, is there. It's the hand of God. We don't see God personally having, singing with him, dancing with him, apologizing, but we see his hand in things, So internally, we see that guidance, that which is taking us to him as a person, showing us how to get free from all the things we've done, But externally, we look and we see time, It's a big discussion, but there are many, many very, very nice illuminating perspectives from this, from Western culture, everything else. So time is, and we analyze by mechanistic systems, and in the science is based to a large degree, the way we use it at least, on Euclidean geometry, points, lines, and so we see time as developed in that same way. But also, not only is time the hand of God in things, and very regular, but it's moving in cycles. Our heart is going in cycles. Our breathing is going in cycles. Our stomach, the days, the years. And so why not the millennia? We know that these things go on in terms of our relationship with the stars and sidereal time. The North Pole is actually moving over maybe a 14,000 year pace. So everywhere we see cycles. So the Vedas are saying that there is now this 4 ages: the age of gold, the age of silver, the age of bronze, and the age of iron. And we've gone into this 4th age, and it's the smallest. Everybody's mean, selfish, cruel. People are short-lived, only live about 100 years, and so on. Previous age, they lived to be 1,000 years. And the age of gold, which is 3/4 of all this, the fruits and everything is in abundance, just naturally coming. In the 2nd age, the age of silver, which is maybe, how long is it now? 3/4, 1/2 of the whole thing, something like that. 70%, 40%, whatever it is, 60%, 40%, 20%. So 40% of it is like that age. Okay, and then you've got to plant, but you get back at more in abundance. The previous age, the age of silver, you plant, and you only get back what you planted. In this age, you plant, you don't even get back fully what you planted like that. So it's for people who want to be selfish, want to deny God, want to do everything like that, but it lasts for 10%. Let these guys have their experience. They're not going to learn any other way, so the mother lets the kids go ahead and just do whatever they want to do in the play yard. And after some time, some of them come in and she said, "What did you learn?" She said, "Yeah, you got to share your toys." Yeah. So these cycles are there, describing these things, time cycles, And for example, we can see this, for example, in New York. For New York in the winter, there's no fruits, no flowers, no boys and girls playing, no dogs chasing, frisbees, You can't even see people. They're covered over with cloth. The sky is gray, in their cars. And so some cockroach born during this time would tell everybody it's always like this, But some other cockroaches might say, but look here, they're hieroglyphics from previous cockroaches, Sumerian cuneiforms, No, yeah. So we're caught in this thing, but no, there were previous ages, and these things are going on with a broader perspective, And another example is that these things described in the Puranas, lifting Govardhana Hill, they occurred during the Dwapara Yuga, when things were bigger. I think people were living to be 1,000 years, and they had more subtle potencies. And so Krishna doing these things wasn't all that exaggerated compared to what other people could do, but taken all together, yes, it was miraculous. For another thing is, for example, if you take a very, very nice apple and leave it in the desert in Arizona and come back after 1 month, your apple will be gone. Big red rosy apple. You'll find a black little hard rock. And parts in the surface that were fathered together will have been pulled together into wrinkles. And this Kali Yuga, these pastimes of lifting these things and everything else, we're in the season where everything is a hard little rock. But before it wasn't like that. So you start so let's look at the evidence from the Bible, for example. You have Genesis chapter 5, and it describes, thus all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. And his son or something was Seth, who lived to be 912, Enosh 905, Kenan 910, Mahalalel, it sounds like a Vedic name, Kenan 895, Jared, these all sound like Vedic names, Sanskrit names, 962, Enoch 365, something happened to him. I think God took him right up. It doesn't say he died, but it said that God took him up. And Methuselah, who's the most famous, he lived the longest, 969 years. And so you see there's a very much bouncing right off of exactly what the Vedas are saying, that the previous age people lived to be 1,000 years. So we feel there are many problems maybe with accepting the Bible and biblical literature and this Judeo-Christian tradition exactly as it is, and it needs some illumination from some of the Vedic literatures. But you'll find also within the Vedas things that are also just as adjusted and not passed down accurately. But at least the indication is there that these different wisdom traditions are passing down and saying that, yeah, there was a previous age, people were living to be 1,000 years, and so on. Next slide. Okay. Now here's going to kind of a short biography of ourselves, because we're making these statements here, and we're trying to present ourselves as a little bit of a research authority. So on the left is a picture of us there, Hanumat Presaka Swami. And on the right, there's a picture of us as Professor H.H. Robinson. And that's one symposium we did on Bharatiya Sanskriti. It was with the culture of classical India. It went on for 1 week. We had this guy we're talking to right there as well, a very, very big economist there. And he was just enthralled with the Vedic economics and descriptions like that and stuff. You can see, very happy. So for economists, there's just a wealth. The British were appreciating this in many ways, but then they decided, well, we want to cover all this. So there's so much was covered, consciously covered by efforts of the British. And in South America, where we go, we spend a lot of time down there. We see also the Spanish culture, everything else. But still, there are many indigenous cultures. And the programs we're doing currently, everything else, they're still there. And they have a lot of their particular tradition intact, enough where there's a good resource to take stuff from it. So summary again, we were born in 1948 on Guam, so we can see that we were natives of Guam, although my mother was from Kansas and my father was from Mississippi. But all pioneers. It's something I've discovered. My mother's family pioneered all the way to Arizona. Some of were the founders of Presaka, Arizona. My father's side, my paternal grandfather was an Austrian immigrant. And so I'm seeing at 72 years old, hey, that's why I am the way I am. I'm always looking for new stuff. I don't like hanging around and building solid stuff and improving. I like the mental adventure, the new stuff. Okay, so then we went into studied quantum mechanics at UC Berkeley. We did neurosurgery on rats and dogs when we were at the Davis campus. And then finally we graduated first place in psychology in 1970 from the University of California with minor studies in biology and electrical engineering. So we did a real solid investigation of physical sciences, life sciences, and then finally mental sciences. which led us right on to the Northwestern University for doctoral studies, Northwestern University. You know. But by then, we were really convinced, and our mentor, President of the American Psychological Association, Don Campbell, he confirmed it and said, yeah, he said, if you have any manly qualities, you'll cut the apron strings and get out there and see what's going on. And it was, because I've been supported by my parents and then by, grants from the university, if I would accept their point of view. So somehow or other, I was going ahead and investigated a lot of stuff, and then finally met Prabhupada and was initiated in 74. In 84, we then started working with the science aspect of ISKCON. There are 1 million people now in ISKCON, we'll just speak of, friends, supporters, like that. And then we met Bhakti Damodar Maharaj, his picture is on the right there, and he was initiated, Dr. T.D. Singh, and he was head of the Bhakti Vedanta Institute, which was specifically working in this area of science and religion. And you can see in the podium, we had a big symposium, conference, Study of Consciousness Within Science, First International Conference, February 17th to 18th, 1990. And that was in San Francisco. Then later after that went to India, I think. That was just in San Francisco. I mean, three Nobel laureates. Who was it? Sir John Eccles, George Wald, who else? And Charles Towns, I think he also was there, yeah. And then the other one, E.G.C. Sudarshan, was Nobel laureate candidate several times. So it's very, very powerful discussion. It was really the first hard academic conference. And some universities later challenged it, but then they accepted what happened. They accepted, okay, yeah, you're right. It was a solid, bona fide discussion. It was trying to deal with this, make a bridge between these resources of science. We had many good things, but it lacks perspective. That's what we're saying, And these perspectives take us to the area where we can start to get these very, mystical experiences, and which are useful in serving creative self-realization. It can be put on a rational scientific basis like that. Next slide. Next slide. So just to one thing again, because I'm skeptical. Okay, and on the side of like the scientific point of view, we have, for example, like carbon dating. And just recently in Nature, which of course is maybe one of the hardest of all scientific journals in the world. It's a journal of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Recent article said, radiocarbon dating, a key tool used for determining the age of prehistoric samples, is about to get a major update, which means that before it wasn't true. For the first time in 7 years, okay, this 7 years, the technique is due to be recalibrated using a slew, now there's a very scientific word, a slew of new data from around the world. The results could have implications for the estimated ages of many finds, such as Siberia's oldest modern human fossils, which according to the latest calibrations are 1,000 years younger than previous thought. So this is of the hardest tools to establish their time view, and of course it's dependent upon their time view also. If you start investigating it, which I've got just a little summary here. There are many things that are up to criticism, and so on. So this is just to look at again the scientific point of view and putting it all in proportion and using it properly, rational empiricism. Then it's wonderful, but without a broader perspective, and without also different ways of doing science. We've adopted one way which is very Northern German. But other ways, like ecology was not accepted as a science, in the beginning. But then actually they began to realize, okay, it's not like they were trying to make everything into physics. That was the dominant idea, but now it's loosening up. And other sciences are developing in their own right. Physics is still very much the king, but now other things are being allowed to develop, which also give results, which we need, like ecology. So contrasting again, of course, we have the Krishna, next page. And this is there in the way of knowing details. So to finish off here, this is Bhagavad Gita. Rajavidya Rajaguyam Pabitam Idam Uttamam Pratyakshavagaman Dharmyam Susukam Kartum Avyayam. This knowledge, why is the K there? I know. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. It is the perfection of religion or the perfection of science. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. So here are many things which are not in science. Joy, direct perception of the individual. Who is the scientist? Who is the unmoved mover? Who is the unknown knower? So many fundamental principles in science which are not dealt with very, very practically in terms of philosophy. And Nobel laureates and people like that that we deal with, they many times have very philosophical considerations about this. And so then they're attracted to this Asia Vedic perspective we're presenting. So it's a very good market. Well, why aren't so many people joining you? Because it's a prison. That's why. That's one of the basic principles. This is a madhouse, a prison, a funny farm. Yeah, that's one of the basic principles. And so everybody's saying that this is not our home. It's a little prison house in the city, or a madhouse, and most people are cured, healthy, and get out and go back. So another thesis to consider, which science doesn't really deal with. So that's kind of our point here, that finally we have this knowledge coming from sages, saints, and as being presented directly from the creator of the universe himself, and describing to us how the bigger world is, how the world is over a larger period of time, larger period of space, and how it fits into a perspective of being a part of the whole healthy world. Last slide, Master. Here it comes. Okay. So here we have on the top left, Shalaisi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And here's what he's showing. In his left hand, he has chanting on beads. Here's our whole laboratory. It makes it very simple. You stimulate your fingers, so many nerves. You stimulate your mouth by chanting, so many nerves. If you're a psychologist, you know the homunculus. So it becomes a very, very potent, natural way to catch your mind through the cerebellum, cerebral cortex. Yeah. And then you can actually begin to investigate, am I these senses? Am I these sense objects? No. You can't be a scientist. Well, you actually, anyway, okay, let's say I agree, at least at the present moment, I'm not acting as the sense objects. I'm not acting as the senses. I'm using them, okay? And now am I the perspective, the attitude, the intuition? And that's where science kind of leaves off. They accept it, they talk about it. But if we see people like Einstein's closest friend, I got his name for a moment, he'll come back, Sir Arthur Eddington, that there's no real clear integrated way for science to deal with intuition insight. We play things like improvisational theater. They have techniques which work. And it allows you to come to considering the persona, the attitude with which I'm approaching, the knowledge, the understanding. Yeah. And there are the books. There's so many books within our ISKCON tradition, what to speak of others that are available. But Prabhupada giving us very clearly, very, very self-realized, pure philosopher, pure scientist, yogi. Yeah. So and then he, of course, we're representing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his big pictures there 500 years ago. What was it like then? The world was very different. In India, especially, so many intense, psychological perspectives, attitudes, and so many intense, systems of manipulating material energy. Up on the right, we have a picture there about Bhakti Swarup Damodar again, Dr. T.D. Singh, and so much. He had a PhD in physical organic chemistry from the University of California, Irvine, and so he was no lightweight in terms of actual physical knowledge. And he took his time integrating with Prabhupada, but he also came from the tradition, And so he was a very, very nice bridge to ask questions to Prabhupada, to give answers, and to be able to put this perspective there. In the lower right, then, we have our friend there, one of our alter egos. That's all, folks. So it's a little presentation for tonight. Okay. So thank you very much. I think now I'll return control of our program to Lord Winston.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Maharaj, for a great class. We'd like to open the floor for questions. If anyone has any, feel free to just unmute your mic and ask Maharaj your question.
Hanumat, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Jonathan. This is Jonathan Dom here. Good to.
Okay, this is Hanumat Swami here. Haribol, 10-4.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the presentation. The second time for me to hear you. I met you once. So I had a little bit of a different kind of question, and maybe didn't pertain directly to this. So it's funny. I was walking down the street the other day, and I thought to myself, what was Einstein's view on God? Well, you kind of touched on that slightly a little bit. Jewish tradition, growing up, studied a lot of different philosophy at the younger age of in his teens, actually. Well, anyhow, so obviously he's more or less a godfather of quantum physics, mechanics, and stuff like that. And what, at least from what little I know, quantum mechanics physics says that there's like multiple possibilities. However, according to Einstein, he says God does not play dice. So that to me would suggest a deterministic, almost fate type of a situation in the world, like, and even in your own life. I was kind of curious as to your thoughts on that, because there's certain things in my life I'm like, is this just how it is? Because I can't describe a way out of it from pure effort or will. Without getting too convoluted, I'll kind of just stop there. Hopefully that's enough. If you want me to ask a little bit more specifically, can do that too.
One thing, have you ever read Quantum Questions by Ken Wilber?
No.
You know who Ken Wilber is?
I do not.
If you look him up on the internet, you'll find a pretty cool guy. He's like, he's really kind of interesting. I think he kind of got into Zen and that kind of stuff, that different perspective pretty early. I think he's from the United States. But he's into like health and everything else and bodybuilding, but he also was into like intellectual development in different cultures and stuff. So he has some stuff there. But he did one book called Quantum Questions, which I highly recommend. You can get it. I think you use copies on the internet. Amazon will have it. But what he did, he had a research assistant, and they went through all the modern, founders of modern physics: de Broglie, James Jeans, Schrodinger, Heisenberg, so many of them, one after another, and they called out their philosophical and mystical writings, and it's quite enlightening, what their perspectives were, because at that level, they really were not just like what's the word, the bench jockeys. They weren't just technicians, they were actually looking at things from a broader perspective, and mathematics and everything else. And of course, Bohr and Einstein had a famous ongoing debate on very fundamental levels. People were calling both of them like a little more philosophers than physicists, But that's what it is. It's a philosophy of nature. So I would say that Einstein, his own, he didn't have any real grounding in some way in a broader perspective like that. Like you're saying, there was some things there, investigating different intellectual traditions, looking at his own tradition from this, he grew up in and how a worldview had shaped it. One Professor Newell, he's a guy here locally here in Tennessee. We had a lot of different interfaith dialogues here, very good. And he said one time, Hanuman Swami, for most Jewish people, God is a person, but he's so great that you can never catch up with him. Like you can see his footprints, you can feel his hand and things, but he's just like, there's no way that we're ever going to be able to come to that level of really knowing him, except for, accepting many traditions. But anyway, so that's for most Jewish people. So that's what we would call Paramatma, the hand of God and things. And if you want to, that, God can guide you with his hand to meet him as a person, to look into his face. That's how we're to get the analogy there, So I think Einstein, they asked him one time, do you believe in God? And he said, it was very clear, it's a citation there in the book, I do not believe in a personal God. That may have been one moment, I do not believe in a personal God, but I believe in a guidance, in a personal kind of like a hand of things behind it. Just what Professor Newell was saying. And he was saying more like the Indian idea of Brahman. Okay. So Brahman, Paramatma. So that's what I understand. That he was at that level of accepting that there is something behind here, and that there is, that he wasn't a complete nihilist, because the Heisenberg principle is that the uncertainty of the product of momentum and location will always be undefinable on a level of Planck's constant. If we know the momentum of a particle or a thing, which direction it's going and how much mass it has, and the more we know that, then we won't be able to know where it is. And the more we know where it is, we won't be able to know. And you can see right away, okay, there's something there, the way the tools are using. But that's what it was. That was Planck's always uncertainty principle. And that's where Einstein was saying, that no, I believe that it was just lack of this lazy thinking, that we actually can figure these things out and we can know the universe, So that's kind of that controversy. It's a little technical. But that's what I think. He was on that level of Brahman, which we say the same thing, where there's a general idea that there is somebody in control here, there is a reality, it is good, maybe a little Paramatma, receiving inspiration, getting in touch with God through his prayers. So that's what I would understand, his perspective. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna, I had a question.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Thank you, Hanumat, for Swami Maharaj. I was wondering that we were reading about, and you were explaining that this is the king of knowledge, and I thought that the three sources that we get this are from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So I'm just wondering, how can we share those sources with people that we meet, like especially the Guru one? Like, if we're not even initiated, haven't taken Diksha yet, and someone asks us to be their spiritual master, like, what do we do?
Well, we go out walking every night. I stay kind of isolated in my cave here. I go out walking with Nitai Gaur Das, Dr. Ravi Prakash Singh, Dr. Desai, and that fellow was Vijayji. The four of us around the neighborhood, and maybe two people come out now, and we all kind of before it got cold at night. So many people had their dogs out for walks, and we start to say hello across the street, get to know each other. So a lot of nice things. And of course, what do you say to the dogs? I mean, you can't how do you give Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra to the dogs? You kind of make friends with the people, and then the dogs begin to know you, and they want to meet people too. They're social animals, and really they want to know people, be friendly, and establish hierarchies and stuff. So they have their idea. Once you got it worked out who's in control of the situation here, and and then the dogs, you have ways of communicating. Actually, they have their whole system of communicating. So you can communicate to them. I'm more of authority than you are. You're more of an authority than I am. Your master is more of an authority than I am. Okay. So on different levels, we can communicate with people who's an authority, and animals in some ways are just naturally more personal about things. They're not Maya bodies. And then they can accept you, they can take prasadam, they can associate with you, and the communication then is heart to heart. At heart, they're changing. They don't know in their minds, they don't know in their senses, but at heart, they're becoming better people. The animals, by taking prasadam, by hearing Krishna Kirtan, they don't understand it, but the sound vibration is pure and it enters the heart. So that's the point, how pure we are. And we don't have to be initiated. From previous lifetime, we may have been very advanced devotees, but now we took birth in a situation where, we've got bad habits and stuff, and we have to purify ourselves, accept the kind of body we have. But at heart, we can be, quite pure, and we can begin to see how we can adjust our media to get the thing across. We can purify our mind and senses by giving up tobacco, giving up alcohol, substituting it with, with what? Ice cream. That's what I did. Yeah. So okay, this is about as much pure as I'm going to get in this lifetime, and it's good enough. I know, and if somebody is ready, needs to hear from somebody more pure, more advanced, I take them to them. Very, very beautiful young college girls would come into the temple in Berkeley, and I would say hello, and this is the Hare Krishna temple. Yeah, do you know anything about us? I said, no, my friend said it's nice. I wanted to know somebody. Here's a book. Sit down. I'll get somebody. And I go find one of the nice, older, ladies and stuff, and they would preach to them then. And they were very happy with that. Oh, it's nice. You got, ladies and gentlemen here, Maybe I can find a nice husband here. Okay, the gentleman. Yeah. So 18,000 verses in the Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and they're all describing how to communicate to different people on different levels. And so that's what it is. Basically, we just chant Hare. We can always chant Hare Krishna. We can always chant Hare Krishna, and people can hear that. And beyond that, if we have a little understanding, we can explain what we know. And then we can try and put them in touch with Prabhupada. Give them a book. Put them in touch with people who will be able to guide them through Prabhupada's books better than we will, or even more appropriate. Like again, the ladies may look at the story of Devahuti and Kardama Muni from Devahuti's point of view. Okay, so is that some kind of help? To tell people what you know.
Yes.
And then, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, your microphone, yours muted is. There we go. Fun with grammar. Yeah, I got to watch out because Peter Medley's here. He's an English major from Berkeley. He's also a wrestler. Dangerous guy. If you don't agree with him, he'll put you in a West Point.
Maharaj, there was a film about a physicist named David Bohm who studied Buddhism, and he talked about sort of like nirvana or the quantum state as being full of infinite potential. He was saying more like it's full, like we have the idea of shunya, that Buddhism is emptiness, but he was saying that a field of fullness was the goal or something like that. Could you comment on that?
David Bohm, he's a real interesting guy. He was a contemporary of Einstein, but I guess much younger. So everybody wanted to meet him because here's a guy. We're seeing a guy. It's like parampara. Whenever we would go anyplace. The book Religions of Man? Did you ever study that?
No.
It was like the most popular high school book on comparative religions. It was done by Houston Smith. And he came out, it was in several editions. In the later editions, it changed from the religions of man to the religions of people. So they wouldn't have, macho, thing on it. But he came to some of our programs, a very prominent guy and very intelligent, incredible. He was at the University of Syracuse for so many years. So he told the story in one of his books that, there were funds, every department, every school, like theology and, religious studies and physics and stuff. There was a basic grant from the university for all of them to invite special guest speakers. And so and that's all they had. Of course, the physics department had so much more money from different resources, from different grants to bring people and everything. So when it came time for him to get his money to bring his person, he decided to bring David Bohm, this physicist. And so everybody was thinking this is kind of strange. You got this, it's only money you got, and you're going to bring a physicist? Why don't you bring some famous theologian or something? He said, no. So the head of the department of physics called him up and he said, "Hey, Houston, it's kind of strange you're bringing David Bohm, but if you can get him here, boy, any shortage of funds to get him here, we'll help you out. We'll back you up, anything you need." So he was able to get him there, and they were surprised. So it came down to the night of his presentation, and the hall was completely packed, all 800 seats, and they had satellite television set up, and everybody was watching the whole thing. And the physics department had captured the entire first row, all the professors, and David Bohm was sitting there. The Houston Smith was also along with them. And he said, David Bohm got up, and he started off, and he was sure that he lost every single person in the audience, except for the professors of mathematics and the physics teachers. after about the first 15 minutes. You know, the entire board was covered with like equations and everything else and so forth and so on. You know, and but nobody left. You know, they're getting some sense of what he was talking about, and also too, you know, very impressive. So then they had, after questions, the head of the physics department raised his hand. He said, "Professor Bohm, this is just fantastic, you know, what you're presenting like that. But it seems to be more philosophy than mathematics and physics." And David Bohm says, "I make no distinction." And the professor, he's an assistant, said the physics professor just kind of turned to him and smiled and kind of nodded, bowed his head like that. Yeah, okay. He showed us a side of one of the greatest living physicists who's taught us that we should be a little bit humble about understanding philosophy that we're in our lives. And that's a big step, you know, that we really have to think about, at least think about philosophy, what to think about theology. So that's what David Bohm's thing, his idea was the implicate order, that there is an order behind everything, which is so great, we'll never be able to figure it out. You have to be humble. We can get snatches of it like that. And so Buddhism has a perspective on it, I would say. And that's what you're saying, that nirvana, you know, was coming to this point of realizing unlimited potential, which is there and which will never, what's his name? Carl Jung was almost saying the same thing. They're all kind of coming out of the same group ethos to a large degree, that we'll never quite be able to figure it all out, but we can understand more and more, and it has so much potential. And they didn't like Buddhism as nihilism. I don't think either Bohm or Jung liked Buddhism as nihilism. And it's not necessary. Yeah. Yeah. Seeing it as infinite potential is also valid. Yeah. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. I make no distinction.
Maybe I could ask one more question. Like in the Bhagavad Gita, the word nirvana appears a couple of times, and
Oh my God.
I think at one point, Srila Prabhupada translated it as the kingdom of God or something like that. So can you comment on that?
Yeah, at the end of the second chapter, of course, which is a summary of everything, it says that something about how somebody who follows this prep process, at the time of death, he can go to the kingdom of God. The actual words used are Brahma Nirvana, like that. And so I think these non-devotional Buddhist sects, when they heard that, they would just like, you know, die. It would just scream and hold their ears and suffer, translating Brahma Nirvana as the kingdom of God, you know. But it's a Sanskrit word. You know, Buddha comes out of a whole Sanskrit tradition. Everything else, you know, he never really kind of denies it exactly. And so much of the way of communicating and everything else, you know, comes from this tradition, you know, different schools. So nirvana, like I forgot Radhika, I keep forgetting what it is, but nir means not, and vana doesn't mean forest, but it means a kind of like a cessation. That's all it's saying. It's not. It's just saying cessation, and cessation of what? So it can very well be interpreted as cessation of material existence. And most Buddhists accept it as that. You know, most Buddhists, when they talk about there is no Atma, they are not referring to a self. They're referring to the mind. And that's all they ever really deal with, pretty much. You know, yeah. Then after that, okay, you become self-realized. Okay, and you deal with it. You know, so nirvana, not this, not that, not this. And then Brahma, of course, means the greatest, that which is all expanding and everywhere. So I'd say that, you know, Prabhupada's translation is, you know, is true, but it's just, I mean, Prabhupada's making it. He's making it so that people will not become confused. Somebody has to just say, Prabhupada said, I explained the Bhagavad Gita so even a first-class fool could understand it. You know? So right from the very beginning, he's making it very solid, and without a doubt, you know, what Krishna is saying is valid, and it is going to the kingdom of God, but it's talking about it in a general sense. You know, let's go to Europe for our vacation this summer. Well, you know, we're going to go to Europe, yeah, but then there's a big variety between Norway and Italy, between the Riviera and and mountain climbing in the Alps. Yeah. Okay, I make no distinction. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Lalita Radha Devi Dasi has arrived. Yes, there's Lalita. Some people say that Lalita's a tough cookie. Like that. Lalita's a tough cookie, but she's really Krishna's friend. Like that. But Krishna has to watch out for her. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Hari Lila is there. Hi, Hari Lila.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I have a question.
Okay.
Hi, I'm a fellow Big Ten alumni. I'm not a Wildcat, though I'm an Illini.
Okay.
So as a physician and a neuroscientist, I'm a little concerned. More recently, I've seen a very large politicization of science. And I've never quite seen science politicized in such a way, and it's kind of frightening. And I've also seen religion politicized most recently, and I'm not sure how we can rectify the two of these things. Can you speak to that?
How we can rectify the politicization of both science and religion?
Yes.
And how we can walk on water like that,
Exactly.
fly to the moon?
Exactly.
My goodness. You're asking a big task of me. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is everybody has to have a world view. What are we going to call it? Even the dog. Even the dog is intelligent enough to he has his he or it. I can say that, encourage dogs especially. She, he, or it have their particular, view of reality. And when they're associating with human beings, they're peaceful and stuff, and they got, okay, this is my territory, and well, I got to show some social restraint here in terms of other dogs and stuff. But they're not, they can have something there in terms of the reality. And another dog dies, they have their social hierarchy. And dogs, of course, dogs marry for life. Right? You know this, especially say it was the huskies and stuff. It's finished. They're monogamous. Wolves, I've heard that if some wolf has illicit sex, if some wolf engages in adulterous relationships with another wolf's wives, the rest of them will kill him. They get carried away, and twist chimpanzees. So mammals, especially, but other species too. There's some philosophy of life, some perspective like that. So some people, usually polite, civilized, it means city. So if people come to this level, above existing, like, what do you call it? We start off just like amoeba. It's called anamaya. The baby just sucks his mother's breast, and it's just like, eat, sleep, dream. And human beings, we develop the next stage. This is called Maslow, right? It says something the same way. Anamaya, then pranamaya, where we begin to realize, oh, I am this body, the terrible tooth, right? And then cut the hair or flush the feces down the toilet, then boy, it's World War III, until you begin to realize the boundaries and, okay, my hair can be detached, my clothes can be detached. This is and so then after that, pranamaya, life, air, which animals come to that. The next is manomaya. And this is where human life really begins to distinguish itself from animal life. But animals also form mental conceptions of what's right and what's wrong. And especially animals like chimpanzees and humanoids, and they're appreciating this. There's ban on experimental, sacrifice of animals. Of course, for neurophysiology, you can no longer use dog brains or no longer use chimpanzee brains,
Right.
or what's the other ones there? Rhesus brains.
Rhesus monkeys, yeah.
It's a challenge, But that's the saying. Hey, we're beginning to realize that these are people, and I know neurophysiologists who had that realization they couldn't do it anymore. So they realized, my God, these are people. It's simple, but they love each other. They make social standards. They establish boundaries. And they pass on traditions. Okay, hey, So then that's the political level. And so behind it is hedonism, egoism, the higher self, or something else like that. Because science and religion, in some ways, both have to be politicized for most people. You know, most people go to a church. They live in a society. I live in Nashville. It's by this, you know, there are more churches in Nashville than any other place on the face of the earth except for the Vatican per square mile. And people here are very religious. You know, in California they're more spiritual, but in Nashville they're more religious. In California, where I came from, they understand philosophically these principles a little better, but they don't always do it. In Nashville, it may not. That's just a highly developed intellectual thing. But hey, you know, I start almost crying here. Sometimes the people here just say, break your heart with how sincere they are about applying the basic principles. You know, yeah. And so these different perspectives like that. So it's I wouldn't say it's wrong politicizing what do you call it, science, but in proportion. Science should be aimed at doing good things for certain people. One study, sociological science, studies showed maybe 20 years ago that science and science technology, which was taken from it, benefited most white middle-aged males. Okay, I would say now with the growth of feminism, which we understand in Kali Yuga is quite natural, it's changing. You know, but there has to be behind it all your love. You're doing it for somebody. Who are you working for? Of course, a lot of science is based for the military. A lot of science is based for capitalists. You know? And so that's the question of not politicizing it, I would say, but understanding, having healthy politics, healthy political science. It's a whole other thing. And right away we see that science cannot deal with this very well. But the Vedas give a very, very good idea of Varnashram about, you know, political science and how to deal with the capitalists and laborers, men and women, you know, nationalism, you know, racism. Very nice idea. And so that's what I'm saying, introducing these ideas, and there's so many ways to introduce it, like other devotee was asking, 18,000 verses on how to introduce it. You know, yeah, I could go on forever for a long time. Is that what you're asking? Is that
Yes, indeed. Thank
you.
Okay.
Dr. Jariwala, he's a fellow who was in our community in San Jose. He used to work as he was a PhD in chemistry. He used to work in Linus Pauling's institute there, but in Indian. So gradually he got more and more, he came because it was an Indian church, Hare Krishna, and he coming. And then actually he became more and more involved in appreciating, you know, the philosophical perspective of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Never had such a, you know, strong philosophical presentation and so on. And systematic from his tradition was more general. And so finally he even got initiated devotee in ISKCON. And at some point he started he worked until finally he was working for a German pharmaceutical company which used all organic resources and did a lot of pro bono work in third world countries with vitamins and stuff. You know, and so it really changed into much more mode of goodness work in science. And then him and about 5 more of his associates were starting to write up articles and submit them to referee journals. And he said he got the shock of his life that they would not accept them. And he said it was completely obviously for political reasons that these would have been contrary to the big pharmaceutical companies and their profit and stuff like that and so on. And he said he never realized before, like, you know, how much, you know, there was this, you know, dominated by pure hedonism for the benefit of a few people like that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I've had the same experience. Yeah. These super hotels, or a town car picture of the airport, in San Francisco. Unbelievable. The opulence of these places in terms of material gratification is just, you ever go see, you know, $800 a night, you know, but you're up in the stars. And you had mentioned Ken Wilber before. I want to mention that Ken Wilber is a wonderful guy, and I love his book, A Brief History of Everything. I would strongly recommend that to anybody who's interested in reading quantum questions, and Ken Wilber is fantastic. Ken Wilber lifts weights. I don't know that a bit. He's really that kind of all-around guy. He's like good health and
physical guy. He's kind of like, I think you have a hard time, maybe a little bit of a hard time. Krishna consciousness, he's proud. He's a proud person. That's he's proud. He's proud of being healthy. He's proud of being humble. I think. I don't think he's proud of being humble. Some people are very. He's a little more honest. And I'm better than you. How is your fruit tree? All right, Lila doesn't say anything. There's Charles D. Lend. Looks like a statue in the Wax Museum. Maybe we'll all be statues in the Wax Museum sometime. 500 years from now, they'll remember us and they'll say that Sarvabhauma Devi Dasi and Hanumat Presaka Devi Dasi were great founders of the Krishna consciousness movement in Houston. They worked together. They were two very, very chaste Matajis and like that. We'll be remembered maybe for something. Yeah. Maybe your dolphin book will take off at some point. Yeah. Yes. Okay. We're going to maybe have another program here, kind of 8:15. So maybe we'll be shuffling off our mortal coil here, as far as the and our program here goes. But this is so nice, participating and seeing everybody. And maybe who knows? So this is it. Chant Hare Krishna. We're all packed up together, and gradually we start working together. We have our own website, www.jayarama.us, and we're still maintaining these things. This is our last year. We're giving up our all of our kind of formal work with administration, the Latin American GBC, the Ministry of Education, and we're telling them we'll be around as advisors, but we're not going to take up any more projects, not going to stuff anymore, And then actually we're looking, it's a very, very good estimation, we'll be leaving our body about 2024. We all got it planned. Prithu Das and I are going to share a taxi like that. We got it booked. And so I can see my teeth are falling out, my memory's going, and everything else, But I'm becoming more intelligent, right? Right, Sarvabhauma? We're becoming more intelligent.
You always were intelligent. So.
Yeah, okay. I can't tell if I'm having ecstasies or if I'm becoming senile. One of the two is happening. Probably both. Winston, where are you from? Where's your family from? Philippines?
My parents are from Taiwan, Maharaj.
Taiwan. That's almost the same as the Philippines.
Yeah. And I was born in Jersey, so.
I'm from Guam. In my last lifetime, I was a Chinese Mexican monk. I love Chinese. I love Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, what's his name? Donnie Yen. Everybody. I like Mexican food. Okay, so thank you all very much. Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.